How is it going, everyone? Tomorrow will officially mark 9 months to the day of the PlayStation 5 being released, at least over here in the West. I believe it came out a few days later in other territories. However, in this video, I want to take a look back at the 9 months and really go over whether or not the PlayStation 5 was worth the purchase day one. And I have a variety of different opinions because recently I've been noticing a lot of people say that it wasn't worth the pickup or there just haven't been that many games, which honestly, you're entitled to your opinion. You can have whatever opinion you want. And honestly as well, I don't think that's the wrong opinion. If you really want to assess whether or not the PlayStation 5 was worth $500 on day one, or God forbid you paid one of the scalper prices, or maybe you got the digital console a little bit cheaper, but it seems like a lot of people are paying scalper prices. But let's just say, all things considered, you got it for $500. Was it worth it or was it not? Now, in my opinion, what you really have to first assess, are you going to be one of those people that are ultimately going to buy the console at some point anyway? I don't believe the PlayStation 5 is going to get cheaper anytime in the near future, so if you day one were of the mindset, hey, I'm going to buy the console at some point anyway, a new model is probably not going to come out for 2 to 3 years, and I'm not going to wait that long to get a PlayStation 5, and you bought one day one, then at the end of the day, what did you really lose out on? Sure, there might be some issues on launch, there might be, you know, things here and there that could be fixed up, but it's not like from a technical standpoint the PlayStation 5 was an absolute train wreck on day one. It's not like Red Ring of Deaths are running about, Yellow Light of Deaths or whatever on that. The PlayStation 5, in my experience, has been a pretty, you know, smooth experience to go through. So from a technical standpoint, hardware standpoint, outside of the fact that the SSD is a bit small, and now we do know we'll have expandable storage, on that end, it's been pretty good 9 months later. I haven't had one issue at all, outside of, I think, day one, I had games randomly deleting themselves, and I actually saw some people early on had that issue as well, but that's been remedied since then. So as far as from a hardware standpoint, I've had a pretty good experience. Now, the issue a lot of people are going to have is from the game standpoint, and I can understand where people are coming from on that end. The true PlayStation 5 exclusives, meaning that these games were not cross-gen. The major ones were, of course, Demon's Souls at launch. That was the launch-selling true next-gen exclusive a lot of people were sold on as far as exclusives are concerned. Returnal came out back in April, and then Ratchet & Clank came out back in June. That's actually not that bad of a slate of games. 3 major titles within the first 9 months of a console's release isn't that bad. It's just a general expectation whenever you head into a console's release. The launch lineup and the subsequent lineup for the next few months are going to be a little bit dry. That wasn't the case with the PlayStation 2, but it's not like the PlayStation 3 had this banger lineup right away in 2006 when it dropped. No, the banger lineup really started happening at the end of 2007, and it really started heating up in 2009. And if you want to go back to the PlayStation 4, the PlayStation 4 had Killzone Shadowfall on launch day. That was the major game. Then the following April, it had Infamous Second Son, and then the following August, it had Until Dawn. So that puts us to a similar timetable into where we are now. So if you want to compare the PlayStation 4's 9 months to the PlayStation 5's 9 months, I'll take Demon's Souls, Returnal, and Ratchet & Clank over Killzone Shadowfall, Infamous Second Son, and Until Dawn any day of the week, and I feel like my recollection is pretty on point. I don't think there was any other major PS4 exclusives outside of the aforementioned titles, so I would actually say the PS5 is a little bit ahead of the PlayStation 4 in that regard. Yes, it's still very easy to make the claim the PlayStation 5 does not have enough games to warrant a $500 purchase, and if you want to make that argument, feel free, but keep it consistent then and say that the PlayStation 4 wasn't worth it within the first 9 months either, and a plethora of other platforms in the last 2 decades plus have not been worth it within the first 9 months either. That is kind of an expectation you have to go into. However, I think the element of the PlayStation 5 that really sets it apart from the PlayStation 4, and to me, more so than the actual true exclusives that you get, the reason to buy a PlayStation 5 in my eyes have been the upgrades, the performance upgrades, the cross-gen titles that are running better, because that was not the case with the PlayStation 4. Don't get me wrong, the PlayStation 4 had some cross-gen games that were running better. However, the PlayStation 4 did not have backwards compatibility to the PlayStation 3. It was not upping the frame rate of PlayStation 4 games. To me, that has been the true selling fact of the PlayStation 5, that there are a lot of games that now you can play at the PS5 on the PS5 at 60 frames per second. And once you play games at 60 frames per second, very hard to go back to 30 frames per second. I still stand by that. I think that is the element of every game that in this generation, if you are still playing a game at 30 FPS or developers are releasing a game at 30 FPS, no Moss, that is not going to slide. It needs to at least have the option to play a game at 60 FPS. Sure, you can have your graphics mode with 30 FPS. You need to give me that performance mode where this game still looks relatively good, and I can play it at 60 frames per second. So not only are you getting the true exclusives that you've gotten, but there have been games like Ghost of Tsushima upgraded to 60 FPS. I know that they're selling the, I guess, the lip syncing and I guess some other upgrades with the new version coming out, but Ghost of Tsushima, if you pop in the base PlayStation 5 version, or excuse me, the base PlayStation 4 version, that's running at 60 FPS on the PlayStation 5. Game changer to me. Final Fantasy 15 running at 60 frames per second. Game changer. Days Gone. Oh my god, can we talk about Days Gone being an entirely different game on the PlayStation 5 and the PC versus the original PlayStation 4 version? The PlayStation 4 version had a plethora of bugs, and that hasn't been completely eliminated with the PlayStation 5, but so much better. Metro Exodus is another game upgraded. And since we have true backwards compatibility, we can actually play these games, which that was my issue with the PlayStation 4. I still had to have my PlayStation 3 out and about. Now I can put my PlayStation 4 away, I can put it into a different room, and it has backwards compatibility. So from that standpoint, that is an element. Now obviously, I'm making a big deal about this element, but that's something that should have been available. But from my standpoint, because I was going to pay $500 anyway, I've got to play Ratchet & Clank, I've got to play Returnal, I've got to play Demon's Souls. Those games have been pretty good. The cross-gen games look really good, and more importantly, play really well. The 60 frames per second is really the deal maker, and the fact that so many games have been upgraded on the PlayStation 5. I think if you are on the fence on whether or not to pick it up right now, assess the games that are available, but also assess the fact that there are a lot of PlayStation 4 games that have been upgraded for the PlayStation 5, and really the core element is that frame rate. So if you know the difference between 30 and 60 FPS, and that's a big deal to you, that is, to me, a reason alone worth jumping onto the PlayStation 5, because at the end of it, a lot of you guys are going to end up buying the PlayStation 5 anyway, and if there isn't a hefty amount of games available right now, well, you can still enjoy your PlayStation 4 games with better performance, and I do think that's a good reason to pick it up. Obviously, I'm not going to say it's a slam dunk must-own console right now, because it just isn't, especially if you're paying scalper prices. I do not recommend at all paying more than $500 for a PlayStation 5. It's just not worth it from that standpoint. However, if you can get it for the $500 MSRP, if a Ratchet & Clank interests you, which, you know, I'm super high on Ratchet & Clank, I love the game, but let's be realistic, $70 for an 8 to 10 hour game is not going to fly for a lot of people. And then Demon's Souls to me was great, but it is a remake of a PS3 game, and I know that's not a game for everyone. And Returnal, I enjoyed it. More often than not, the people that I talked to had their issues with Returnal. That game does have an 85 on Metacritic, which is a super respectable score, but still a lot of people were not super into it. And I can understand why, but if you want to play a Final Fantasy VII remake with upgraded visuals, I know the Plus version isn't upgradable, but if you bought the PlayStation 4 version, man, that game looks great. I'm playing through it again on PS5, and I'm having a great time with it. If you haven't played a game like Days Gone yet and you want to get it on PlayStation 5, that game's like an entirely upgraded experience. I don't want to say completely different experience because it's not that, but it is so much better. Ghost of Tsushima as well at 60 frames per second, so much better. And that is really the standout element to the PlayStation 5 to me right now, outside of the game library. Now, I highly expect that 2022 is going to be a lot better from the game library standpoint, because you are going to have Horizon, you're going to have God of War, and you're going to have Final Fantasy 16. Now, the key about that, Horizon and God of War are cross-gen games. You know, I would like to play those games on the PlayStation 5, given that I have my skepticism on how those games are going to run on the base PlayStation 4. Look, God of War wasn't running amazing on the base PlayStation 4, and at this stage of the game in 2021, the upgraded visuals and 60 frames per second, I think, are essential. I'm not going back to playing games potentially at 25 frames per second. I could see that happening with like a God of War on a base PlayStation 4, a non-pro PlayStation 4. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. Same thing with Horizon. You know, it is kind of unfortunate that because it's cross-gen, it's just not an opinion. This is fact. The game will be limited on the PlayStation 5. It will not see its true potential. You need to be a legitimate, true exclusive to utilize everything from a platform. And if you have it on the back of your mind that, hey, this game does need to be on the PlayStation 4, you are going to have to cut corners here and there. That's the same thing with PCs. If every game was being developed with the highest end PC in mind, now it would be a lot better than what you even see on the PlayStation 5. If every game was being developed with like an RTX 3080 Ti in mind, it would be, they could do so much more, but obviously developers have to get stuff on consoles and everything like that. That's kind of the same deal with these cross-gen games. They're gonna look good on the PS5, they're gonna play really well in terms of being 60 frames per second, but they're not gonna reach the true potential of what the PS5 can do, and we're not gonna see that until we ultimately get the true exclusives, and you saw that clear as day with Ratchet & Clank. Ratchet & Clank is a clear indication of what the PS5 can do, and I think Insomniac, even with Ratchet & Clank, they've only scratched the surface. So that's my take on the PS5. If the performance upgrades don't interest you that much, look at the game lineup. It's not that stellar right now. Ratchet & Clank to me was really good and is my game of the year so far, but it's $70 for 8 to 10 hours of gameplay. Returnal and Demon Souls, they're gonna have their audiences, but assess whether or not you like Souls. Souls is for some people, for other people it's not. And Returnal, like I said, I enjoyed what Housemarque delivered with that game, but a lot of people were not happy with that game based on the fact that there were bugs, the checkpoint system wasn't great, and it is a new IP that didn't have a lot of mass appeal. But that's just my 2 cents. Definitely let me know what you guys think in the comments section down below. A lot to talk about and definitely a variety of different opinions. Maybe I came across a little bit negative. Maybe some people will think I came across too positive. I'm really somewhere in the middle, and there's not a definitive answer on whether or not it's worth $500 for a PS5, just because it's really assessing what you want out of your experience. Do the performance upgrades mean that much to you? To me, they do. Being able to play a Ghost of Tsushima, a Final Fantasy, that means something to me, and I'm gonna buy a PS5 at some point anyway, and I don't think that price is gonna drop. Maybe we'll have, you know, the SSD get expanded a little bit to a terabyte, but outside of that, I don't see, you know, the base console going down to $300 or $400 anytime soon. So let me know all your thoughts in the comment section down below. Rambling long enough, sound off there. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.